So the tabloids, it's a great story. In fact, it wasn't just the tabloids, it was at every newspaper, and TV, and it was on breakfast TV and ITV. Trevor McDonald did a Tonight with Trevor McDonald called Exit the Dragon. So it was completely all over everywhere. And it was actually quite devastating because I'd only experienced positive press up to that point. But of course, I'd just been on Dragon's Den, so this Dragon Fails story was just too delicious for them to, it was the irony of it.
Rachel, it's such an honor to have you on the platform. You are the founder of Red Letter Days. You're also a highly successful dragon. And even now you've started your own TV station, Source TV. You're a sought after speaker. So it is a real privilege to have you on the platform.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
So you were born in 1964 and raised in Essex. After being rejected by 5 universities, you then became an accountant. What sparked your entrepreneurial drive?
Oh, wow. So actually, I wasn't quite an accountant, just to clarify. I actually specialised in taxation, and I was dealing with the taxation of entrepreneurs and small businesses. So I had some very inspiring clients like Sir Terence Conran, who created Habitat, and Anna Vinton, who created the Reject Shop. So this is back in the 80s. But the key thing for me was that I actually grew up above my dad's business. So I grew up around business. I was always downstairs in my dad's shop, helping out. And then later, when I was a bit older, I started doing the accounts. And that's what got me the job in a firm of accountants. So I kind of had business in my blood. And so it kind of felt natural for me to one day to create my own business. But I think it really did help because I was a bit split, because when I applied to the universities, it was to do history of art, and I'm very much into art. But it kind of like the universe decided that wasn't for me. And actually, it was the perfect I just got a job as an office junior, and I worked my way up, and I qualified in taxation. And it was actually the perfect training, because obviously when I went into business when I was 24, I'd had 6 years basically of really good financial training, which I think really stands you in good stead. I'd say I'm a natural marketeer, but it really helps to be able to understand accounts, be able to do spreadsheets, financial forecasts, and translate your idea into numbers. So I do believe that the universe is working for us the whole time, even though we might get upset, oh, I didn't get into university, but actually looking back, I think sometimes you have to trust and go with the flow, that everything's working out for your highest good,
That's very powerful. And even following on from that, you started the business at the age of 24. I think that's incredible. So could you please just tell us a bit about that? Why you decided to start the business and everything?
Yeah. Well, I was working my way up in accountancy, and I was specialising in taxation. And when you do that work, initially you start just by doing people's tax returns. But as you get more and more experienced, you start going much more into taxation law and case law, and much more kind of higher level work. And I knew that my heart was not in that, and that it was not, I could have stayed in accountancy and, got the BMW and the quite a good salary. But I just knew that it wasn't my soul calling, shall we say. And so I ended up leaving. By then I was at Arthur. I worked my way up to Arthur Andersen, which was then the #1 accountancy firm in the world. So hence why I had such inspiring clients. And it was going to see these clients and to going into that world of business and money, I guess, and being taken out to very expensive restaurants by clients as part of the team. It kind of gave me a taste of I want to do that. So I just ended up leaving, and I went traveling. I kind of took a gap year, really. Went traveling across Europe, and then drove across America with a friend. But then I was just I've got to get back and get busy. So it was when I got back to London, I actually got a kind of freelance part-time job just doing accountancy, being paid by the hour. And that was when I thought, right, now's the time. I'm going to do my own business. Yeah.
Thank you. And one thing that's also incredible about you is that you actually took £25,000 of your own money, £10,000 from family and friends to start Red Letter Days, which I think is bold and it's incredible. But why do you decide to do that as opposed to doing what many other people do, which is getting a loan from the bank?
Well, it's really interesting you asked me that question, because actually that was what I tried to do. And I just remember the bank manager from Barclays, who, ironically, it was actually Barclays which eventually pushed us into liquidation when we were, like a 18 million turnover company. I mean, Duncan Bannatyne from Dragon's Den, he actually said to me, first rule of business, Rachel, never bank with Barclays. But interestingly, the bank that I approached to try to get a bank loan was Barclays. And I remember, this is when I was 24, I remember this bank manager saying to me, and bear in mind, I'd done a whole business plan and I had all of this experience in accountancy. And he said to me, and I remember it very, very vividly, he said, I can't do it to you, Rachel. I'm not going to lend you this money. I can't do it to you. This business is going to fail. I can't do it to you. It's not going to work. And he was so negative, and I was very determined. And at the time, there was a thing called the Business Expansion Scheme, which was a Margaret Thatcher kind of tax incentive, where if someone invested in a business, they got 100% tax relief. So basically, it was a bit of a no-brainer. So actually, my family, friends and family, put in some money. I put in all my savings and very quickly burnt through the whole lot. But it was enough to kind of just get going, Yeah, so I was very determined. So it's really, really interesting, because banks are not my favourite people. I would advise against dealing with banks. I mean, obviously we have to, but as we've seen, the whole banking sector is, I think it's incredibly corrupt, actually, to be honest. But anyway, that's a whole other can of worms.
Thank you. And what a lot of people may not always know about Red Letter Days is that it was actually a very successful company. So it was turning over 18 million a year. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We were a market-leading brand. I'd literally taken it from nothing to 18 million turnover. Its profit was about 1.4 million. So it had growth, it had profitability, it had a great brand. But the challenge we had was that the banks bonded our credit card takings, because we were selling a lot of Red Letter Days experience vouchers by people buying on credit card. So when we got to a certain level of turnover, we kind of flagged up as a high risk business, because basically we were issuing bits of paper in return for money, and it was like an IOU. So you might give someone a motor racing voucher for Christmas, but they might not take it up till the following June, for example. So there was a huge contingent liability, and they literally bonded our takings overnight. So they strangled our cash flow, and in business, cash is everything. If you run out of cash, it's really, you're dead in the water. So yeah. That was actually what forced us. It was actually our bank that forced us into administration, even though we had 3.3 million cash at bank, but we couldn't touch the money. They wouldn't let us touch the money. I think it was completely unlawful and illegal, but I did actually take legal advice, and a lawyer just said, Rachel, are you going to spend the rest of the money you have and the rest, the next few years fighting Barclays, or are you just going to get on with your life? So, it was interesting. I think the banks did get their karma, because Barclays had to be bailed out, I think by Qatar, weren't Barclays in the kind of rescue thing. It wasn't the British government that rescued Barclays. I think it was some Middle Eastern.
I'm not too sure, but I know that there have been lots of banks in trouble, so I know that for sure. So, but that is actually quite shocking. So, because it's interesting because even the media coverage surrounding that, they didn't tell that side of it. They just focused upon the, the failure of the business. So I know that it's much later in the interviewing questions, but I want to touch upon that because I'm 30, but I was much younger when I saw you on Dragon's Den. But I was shocked with the media coverage of your business. So can you just tell us a bit about that and how that impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the tabloids. It's a great story. In fact, it wasn't just the tabloids; it was at every newspaper, and TV, and it was on breakfast TV and ITV. Trevor McDonald did a Tonight with Trevor McDonald called Exit the Dragon. So it was completely all over everywhere. And it was actually quite devastating because I'd only experienced positive press up to that point. But of course, I'd just been on Dragon's Den. So this dragon fails story was just too delicious for them it was the irony of it. But of course, that is the truth of business, is that all of the dragons have had failures or come to the really close to the edge and maybe pull back from the brink. So, it's not an uncommon thing in business, to lose a business or to be on the edge. I mean, Donald Trump's a great example. I mean, in the early 90s, he was like completely on the edge of bankruptcy and millions of dollars in debt, so, and look at him, he's now president. So, it goes with the territory. But of course, when you're dealing with journalists, their business is to sell newspapers. And actually, I had a great PR guy at the time, a guy called Ian Hayworth. And he just said, when everything kind of collapsed, well, actually, I had to sign the business into administration to kind of rescue it from its creditors. When you put something into administration, it kind of freezes everything for a deal to be done to save it from its creditors. And he actually said to me, he said, Rachel, go on holiday for a couple of weeks. And because he knew, because we had like Daily Mail journalists outside the house and outside my family home in Essex, which was registered. I think I was still registered there for some things. And my brother's like, there's press outside. So, it was, it was really, really hard. But on the other side of it, I just had my fourth son, Michael too. And it was August, the sun was shining, and I'd kind of been in battle for 2 years. So it was actually a relief. It was almost like I'd been given this beautiful gift of this newborn baby. The sun was shining, it was August. I didn't have to go into battle anymore. So it was actually quite a relief at the end that that the nightmare was over, although a kind of new nightmare was coming in. But off the back of that, I opened up to a whole new career of speaking and being asked to be a mentor and doing consultancy and creating a whole business around inspiring, motivating and empowering other entrepreneurs on their journey, which I'm still doing 20 years on, so, and that's very fulfilling to pass on wisdom, Yeah.
I love your positivity. Like, it's just incredible that you've gone through all of this and you didn't deserve any of it, but you've still managed to bounce back from this. I just want to focus.
I just want to say, managing your motivation, I think, is a really, really key thing when you go into business, because you've got to learn to be able to come back to center and keep going no matter what happens. And so if you learn to manage your motivation, because you're going to get waves hitting the ship, and you need to practice that ability, like sailing, to hold your rudder firm, even if you're sailing through a storm, because you do hear of, entrepreneurs losing their businesses, killing themselves, and it's very important to be able to cope with the highs and the lows,
Yeah, this is just an incredible answer. It's just very, very powerful. I also want to focus upon your time on Dragon's Den. So I said I grew up watching you on my screen when I was really little. So, so
it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, so I was 10. I still remember you.
Yeah, well, actually, it's really interesting how much Dragon's Den has influenced young people, and it's kind of opened, inspired so many people to go into business. You know, so that's one of the good things about it.
And how did you come to join the show?
Yeah, well, that could be a short answer or a long answer, because I'm a great believer in intention, and I use a lot of visualization and intention in mentoring, because it's super powerful. Whatever we imagine and we focus our energy on, and we dream and we kind of daydream about, it has tremendous power to manifest. So when I was little and I used to watch television with my grandma, and there was only 3 channels back then, it's like BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and I used to say to my grandma, I'm going to be on television one day. And she's like, yes, dear. And she'd sit there knitting. And I would sort of dance along, you know, to like shows on TV and stuff. And so I just sent that out to the universe. One day I'm going to be on TV. And then it got to the point where we were maybe a 10 million turnover company with about $1 million profit. And I really had this strong sense of like, oh, I should be on television, because there were all these reality shows like Changing Rooms and Ground Force, and there were lots of reality shows coming through. And I just had this instinct, and so I said to my marketing manager, I think I should be on television. And he said, oh, well, let's look into that. So he got the PR company in, our kind of PR marketing agency, because he was working freelance. And so we had this meeting, and I remember distinctly the guy saying, oh, I think I should be on television. And it was kind of like, do you know how difficult it is to get on TV? And I'm like, no, I don't. Is it difficult? And he said, oh yeah, it's really difficult. Well, we're going to have to do a show reel, and we're going to have to do a whole blah, 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 blah. And we were really busy at the time. And I thought, okay, well, let's just shelve that idea, because we've got a lot going on. And if it's that difficult, and it's going to be a bit of a distraction. And then literally within a week or so, one of my marketing team came in and said, we've just had an email from the BBC saying we're doing a new show called Dragon's Den, and they're wondering if you'd be interested in being on it. I'm like, yes. So it's really interesting how the universe does send you gifts, and all you have to do is sort of say yes and show up. I'm a great believer in that saying of a good friend of mine, Moira Bush. She says, say yes and show up. Set your intention, and then say yes and show up, because you don't know where the magic's going to come from. So like that random invitation to a business networking meeting, say yes and show up, because you never know who you'll end up sitting next to. That could be like a key, like turning point in your life. And definitely for me, the Dragon's Den, that invitation was a turning point in my life, to be invited to be part of that show, because it was right at the very beginning when they were actually creating the concept, that first series. The BBC were creating the concept from a Japanese concept. They were westernizing it. So we were part of the creative process, and because originally they were going to have, sorry, I'm rambling on, but they were going to have a table in front of us, like on X Factor or Britain's Got Talent, sort of, like a judge is sitting behind a table. And I'm like, this feels very divisive. Can we just take the table away? Because they did a sort of mock audition-y thing. And I said, can we just take the table away? And they did, and they ended up just having the little side tables with the pile of cash. So that was one of my little suggestions. This table isn't working. So it's very interesting to have been part of the creative process, because of course, I'm not sure what series Dragon's Den, I think it might be series 12 now, but they've licensed the concept to loads of different countries. It's been massively successful globally, and then our series were aired in places like South Africa and Sweden, and so it was really amazing to be part of it, I have to say. Yeah.
And what were some
long answer to your question?
No problem at all. And what were some of your best memories on the show?
Well, I think actually it was more the kind of life that it opened us into, because after filming, Peter Jones would say, come on, let's all go to my club, or like Duncan's club, and he'd had this chauffeur driven Bentley, I think it was, and So we'd all go out and drink champagne, and it really kind of opened me into a sort of rock and roll lifestyle, really, of being a TV star. And, you know, and when you're on telly, you do get invites to things and events. So I think it was more the frills around it, and it just took me into a whole different world and a whole different level of my life. And it's a double-edged sword, I have to say, but it opened so many doors for me. And even now, as I said, it's a double-edged sword because I don't really feel like I'm still Dragon's Den Rachel, but obviously still people remember me, and like you, inviting me onto podcasts like this still 20 years on, even though to me it's like ancient history, and I've kind of reinvented myself many times since then, you know.
And just to touch upon like some of the places you've been to, what are some of the people you've met as a result of Dragon's Den? I asked a similar question to Richard Farley when I interviewed him.
Yeah, well, one of the beautiful things about being on Dragon's Den was that I got a book deal. Now, normally, when you're a writer, you write your book and you try and get a book deal. But I actually got a publisher saying, here's a lump sum and write anything you want. So I wrote a book called Business Nightmares, which was not just my story of going to the edge and falling over and how I kind of, you know, how I kind of stayed sane through that, shall we say. But I also wrote about the stories of 20 other entrepreneurs or high-profile people who got to the brink and either fell over or they pulled back from the brink. And so it was Business Nightmares was actually a story about staying positive and keeping faith in business, actually. So it was great, you know, going to, I didn't meet everyone. I wrote about Donald Trump, for example, and I asked for an interview with him, but he didn't grant one, but I did it from research from his books. Whereas I wrote about Jeffrey Archer, because he literally was facing bankruptcy on the Friday and was a millionaire on the Monday from Cain and Abel, which was his second book, I believe. But it was made into a TV series, and literally through the book sales, literally his publisher sent him a check for like over £1 million, you know. So I went to see him in his penthouse apartment on the Thames, and you know, so it just really opened up a whole new life for me and speaking at events and sitting at the top table at black tie dinners next to various sort of famous people and MPs, and doing like events. I did a big event in Holland with Nick Clegg when he was the Deputy Prime Minister. And so it was kind of rubbing shoulders with these people, and you know, this Essex girl kind of made good, really. So it was nice, and it was nice and it was fun, but it was kind of, yeah, I mean, it's not that doesn't happen to many people in their lifetime, so I consider myself very blessed.
Thank you for that. And what were some of your best investments on the show?
Oh my goodness, I don't think there was a best investment, because I'd never done angel investing before, and I realise now through being on the show and having done, I think I did 4 in the end. It's a really thankless task, and that I think that's why it's very difficult to get angel investment when you're a small business, because it's so much hard work, it's very high risk. You've got very demanding entrepreneurs who kind of, I mean, after Dragon's Den, it was kind of like, where's my check? And it's like, I want to spend the money. And it's like, it's not your money, it's our money, and it's not your business, it's our business. Mm-hmm. And so like, but I need to buy a new car. I was like, why do you need a car? You haven't got any sales. Mm-hmm. You know, I need to buy a van. Well, you haven't got any sales. Why do you need a van? Mm-hmm. Just get a courier service to deliver things until you're at a level of your business where you need to have, where it's more cost effective to buy a van than to get someone who has a van to deliver for you, for example. So I was dealing with a lot of very needy, kind of almost like victim. There's this thing in trauma healing, which is persecutor, victim, rescuer, drama triangle. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know about it then, but I recognize now, looking back, that a lot of small businesses are looking for a rescuer. So you go on a show like Dragon's Den and you think you've hit the jackpot and that it's a magic bullet. It's like a magic bullet that's going to solve everything, and that because you're on Dragon's Den and you now got a dragon on board, that everything's going to be, instantly successful. And I mean, even the success stories like Levi Roots, it wasn't necessarily plain sailing for him. And he's done really well. But so I think it was very easy for people to position themselves in the victim role and, looking for a rescuer and expecting everything to suddenly overnight take off. And that's not how it works,
Thank you. And what was your relationship with the other dragons?
That first series was really fun, and I think the reason why it was so much fun was because of Simon Woodruff was on the panel, the Yo Sushi guy, and he was great. It was really good fun, and he was really sweet and kind to all of the everyone who came into the den. I think because he was so nice and positive and supportive, he didn't quite fit the dragon mold, and they replaced him with Theo Paphitis. And I remember the producer coming up to me in the second series of Rachel, could you add in, there's not enough human content, there's not enough humor, there's not enough, could you add some in? And I'm like, you shouldn't have got rid of Simon, because we took a lead from him, because he was also very good at, he'd been in kind of, I think he'd been in bands. He'd been in the music business. He was a real front man.
Yeah.
And so he really knew how to articulate, and he was very entertaining and engaging and charismatic. So whereas I don't think Theo couldn't quite claim the same. I'll have to be pleasant about Theo.
Yeah. I mean, I interviewed Simon. Yeah.
Simon, yeah, he's great. I love Simon.
Thank you so much. And I know that we know the reason why you left Dragon's Den, but could you just tell us a bit about that? Just why you left, and for all of those in my audience.
Yeah, well, I almost didn't do the second series because Red Letter Days was in challenges, but then they were having trouble finding someone else to agree to do it, because a lot of women don't want to be in the limelight because, like, for example, I think they asked Jackie Gold, and she'd already had a stalker who'd sent her bullets in the post, and she just didn't want to be on television. So in the end, they came back to me, and we ended up filming it in, I think it was May 2005, which is a huge amount of work and effort, because you've got a whole crew of about 30 people and 100 hours of filming. And it's a big project, a lot of investment. So the BBC invested very heavily in this. And then in between it being filmed and it being aired, it came out in sort of November 2005. Between then, Red Letter Days crashed. So they were absolutely furious, the producers, But the Dragons was just saying, well, that's business, it happens. We've all had our challenges. So, but it did create a lot of sort of PR around the show, shall we say. And I think maybe a lot of people watched the second series to kind of to watch the failed dragon in action, But of course, after that, I was cut and from the lineup and replaced by Deborah Meaden, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's like when I kind of look at your life, I never view you as a failed dragon. I just view you as a dragon. I think there's a lot of people that just view you as, because what I remember about you when I was younger, I just remember you as a really nice person on the screen. I remember you as knowing your stuff about business, because people act like business failure or failure in life is a massive thing. Not really. People fail all the time.
Well, there's in truth, there's no such thing as failure. There's just learning experiences.
Yeah.
But of course, the media love to attach labels to you, like anti-vaxxer or business failure, or, if you look at anyone in the limelight, they tend to have 2 or 3 words that are attached to them. like Elon Musk, world's richest man, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So they love to attach these labels to you. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, if you had a strategy in life to never fail, you would end up playing really safe, wouldn't you? Because you'd end up really sticking to what you knew couldn't go wrong. And by definition, when you're in business and you're an entrepreneur, you're creating new market. I mean, Red Letter Days was a completely new market. It wasn't even just a new business. We were pioneering a whole new market sector, which eventually Mintel recognized as a distinct market sector. So it's like, you're venturing into the unknown. And so, of course, there's a risk of failure because no one's done it before and there's no one to copy, sort of thing. And in fact, actually in business, it's the most dangerous thing you can do to copy, because to innovate, you have to, or it's a good idea if you're going to go into a very established industry. Like, if you just copy everyone else, you're just like, you're not going to stand out. You have to have the courage to go 180 degrees in the opposite direction of what's already been done in that sector. Like Dyson going into vacuum cleaners, Hoover and Electrolux had completely dominated the market, complete housewives market. They completely dominated that sector. So he had to go for a niche, and he went for men, like single blokes in contemporary apartments. And he took everything about a Hoover and went 180 degrees in the opposite direction. So like a Hoover, you can't see the dirt. So he made it see-through. So, because men quite like to see the dirt that they've collected. It's like rewarding, like, oh, I've just hoovered and look at all this, And Hoovers were all kind of beige and navy and safe domestic colours that blended in. And so he said, okay, I'm going to make it yellow and grey and purple, and so he to break through into an established sector, you've got to dare to be different. You dare to go 180 degrees in the opposite direction, and that's how he won market share and is now a billionaire, Dyson, from all his inventions. So yeah, he's a great example of that. So yeah, you've got to anyone watching this, change your spelling. So remove failure from your vocabulary and replace it with learning experience. And, yeah.
And I really, really like that. And even just quickly, when Red Letter Days was bought out by Peter and Theo, why did you decide to sell Red Letter Days to them?
Well, it wasn't down to me, because obviously once you put a business into administration, then it's the administrator who makes the decisions, because you've lost it. But I did kind of queue up the deal for them. I mean, it was a bit of a. I'll tell you the story because I do think it's interesting and educational. Because our credit card takings had been bonded, and so our cash flow was being strangled. And there was 3 million sitting in the bond, and we had 300,000 cash at banks. We had 3.3 million at bank, and we were struggling to pay the suppliers every month and to meet the staff bill, because we were having to get money out of this bond. And it was a nightmare. And it was like 2 years of trying to refinance the company. So eventually I had gone to HBOS. I had lots of corporate finance advisors working for me. So we'd gone to HBOS, Bank of Scotland, Halifax Bank of Scotland, and we got an offer of £2 million of bank funding if we could find 2 million private equity match funding. So with this bank finance and with 2 million of equity, so a £4 million injection, the Barclays would have released the bond. So 3 million would have come out of the bond, mm-hmm. right? With that funding in place. And because we had shored up our balance sheet, basically. So I went to Peter and Theo and I said, I've got 2 million from HBOS. Will you match fund it for 2 million? And had they done that deal, we could have actually, and we'd been in discussion with Seymour Pierce to float it, the brokers, stockbrokers. So had they done the deal, we could have refinanced it, cleared up the balance sheet. We had growth. We had a great brand. We had big contracts. We were profitable, growing turnover, market leading brand. So we could have floated the company within within 12 to 18 months. We could have floated it. Peter and Theo would have made a very quick, big amount of money. I would have kept a smaller stake, but I'd have been happy with that. Everyone would have kept their jobs. All of the suppliers would have been paid out. Everyone would have been happy. The company would have kept all of its retail contracts. But oh no, and I think this is probably Theo, it's like, no, let's let it push, because we'll get it out much cheaper. We'll get it out of administration much cheaper. And so, of course, they allowed it to go through the administration process. Oh. They paid $250,000 for it, so yeah, they got it cheaper. But they thought they could wipe the debt, because the suppliers, when you go into administration, it kind of wipes the debt. But no one would supply them until they were paid. They lost all the retail contracts. It massively damaged the brand, and it took them 10 years to trade out, to get and to sell it on. So that is that's what greed does in business, and I think it is a lesson in co-creative collaboration. Is like, it would have been far better for everyone. It would have been a win-win-win-win-win-win for everyone concerned if they'd done a deal, because they would have made a huge amount of money if we'd floated it. I truly believe that. But anyway, we can't live in the past. It is what it is. And otherwise you kind of live in the coulda, shoulda, woulda club. So, it is what it is. And in fact, actually, the fact that I had that business failure, and I wrote a book, Business Nightmares, about it. Of course, when everything crashed in 2008, because the book came out in May 2008, and then in that September, everything crashed, I was now in huge demand because I was someone who'd survived failure. So I'd kind of rebranded myself, and so I was the perfect person to go to events and speak about how to stay positive in the face of adversity, So everything is a gift. So it's only judgment that's like, oh, that's bad, oh, that's good, oh, that's bad. There's a kind of Taoist fable about that, about not judging, because in truth, everything is a gift. You just have to train yourself you have to realize this is a benevolent universe, which is constantly working in your favor, and it's constantly delivering you opportunities, people, things for your healing and for your enlightenment. So everything's a gift. So seeing the gift in everything is the challenge in life. Yeah.
Wow. I think that was just such an amazing answer in so many ways. And one thing that keeps coming out to me in this interview is how positive you are, and how you never let anything get you down. And I just think that's a very incredible quality to have.
Yes, well, it's something to practice. You see, it's like a muscle you practice. So, and I do a lot of spiritual work, and I do a lot of plant medicine work like ayahuasca, and you really learn how to keep vertical alignment, because the matrix and people will kind of pull you out of alignment if you're on the horizontal plane of reality, or 3D reality, constantly pulling you out of alignment. And so this practice of noticing when you suddenly go into a contraction or you're being pulled, and developing all of the techniques to be able to stay in your center. And so a big one for me, like just this morning, because I'm dealing with some little, annoying life situation. And I just went to the beach, because I knew, just took Kobe for a walk on the beach, just to be by the sea. It's so calming just to breathe the sea air, just get back into nature, get back into alignment, take some time out, pick up some stones, set some intentions, and then come back to my desk, So it's important to have your resources so that you can be well resourced, and you learn to notice when you're being pulled out and have ways to come back. I mean, some people do meditation, some people do yoga, some people go out cycling on their bike or jogging. We've all got our own ways of resourcing ourselves to come back to that center point, and it's really worth developing those, because life is full of challenges, you know, and if your life isn't full of challenges, then you've probably gone to that safe space where you're just living a very small, safe life, you know. But as they say, you know, it's safe for a ship to be in the harbour, but that's not what ships are built for, you know.
Thank you so much. And I just really now want to focus upon you being such a successful author. So you're a successful author, you're a successful speaker, you've inspired so many people, you're a sought-after coach. I mean, please just tell me about, firstly, how you reinvented yourself, the success of your books, and also the fact that I've seen you at so many different events, like seeing you like speaking at all of these different events. Like, how have you done it? How have you reinvented yourself?
Well, as I said earlier, I think it is say yes and show up. So I was very fortunate to have had the Dragon's Den experience, because of course now I'm a celebrity entrepreneur. So I got the book deal, and that was very synchronistic, because as I said, it came out in May 2008. Everything crashed later that year. Because I'd been in all the newspapers, everyone wanted to hear my story, so I was being invited to go and speak at all of these events, being paid, you know, thousands of pounds, and flown and chauffeured to places, and having luxury hotel rooms at Gleneagles and speaking to their conference and whatnot. And then, of course, every time you speak, you've got a whole audience who are maybe they're startup entrepreneurs, or maybe they're experienced business leaders. And so I was invited to be non-executive director of various companies, and to be asked to be a consultant, and asked to be a mentor. So I literally just said yes and showed up, and that whole business just unfolded, because I was just, you know, I was just saying yes to whatever came in. And then eventually it got to the point where it was quite overwhelming. At that point, I did actually write a definite chief aim statement, which is a Bruce Lee. It's from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and the very famous one by Bruce Lee he wrote before he became famous. So I wrote a definite chief aim statement that I would only say yes to opportunities which were about inspiring, motivating, and empowering entrepreneurs. I'd only say yes to those, and I'd only say yes to projects that I could wholeheartedly commit to. And that's very important, because you can spread yourself very thin if you're not careful in business. And I do see it also, as well as entrepreneurs, they've got fingers in lots of pies. And what happens is you spread your energy very thin, and it's very scattered. Whereas actually, when you focus on one thing or a definite chief aim, and you align everything to that, then life gets much more powerful, because you're not scattered, you're really clear, and the universe starts delivering more and more of that. So I think focus is a really important thing. And so yes, it just all unfolded and developed, and then all I had to do really was just focus on getting better and better, because I'd never had training on how to be a business coach or a mentor, or how to speak. So I very quickly got with speaking, because I was terrified, and I was like gripping my script. And probably the first 30 events I did, I was absolutely terrified. And I thought, I had this conversation with myself, like, Rachel, if you're going to do this professionally, then you need to get good at it. So I got a voice coach, I went on some presentation training, I really got interested in speaking and other speakers, and I sort of made it my business to get really good at speaking. And then as a mentor, I started to get very interested what makes one person successful and others not. There's a very high failure rate in business. So the ones that do succeed and survive, what is it about them that makes all the difference? And so I got very interested, first of all, in mindset, like Tony Robbins, NLP. Then I started to get interested in the law of attraction, The Secret, Esther Hicks. And then I started to get interested in metaphysics, shamanism, started to do plant medicine. And I also trained in trauma healing, which was massive because I realized that business is actually a healing journey. And so quite often the business you create is actually part of your trauma healing, and most people don't realize. So quite often as a mentor, I say to people, do you realize that you've just recreated like the dynamics of your childhood? It's almost like so that our adult self can work through the challenges we had as a child, and recreate, and that's how trauma often displays. You'll reinvent the situation so that your adult self can deal with it differently and heal, and you can fully feel and heal. So it's very fascinating. I could go on for for a long time about all of these things, but yeah, it's been, and it still is a journey of discovery, and the better I get, the deeper I go, the more powerful it is when I'm on output. So I spend a lot of time on input and my own work, my own shadow work and healing, so that I can be ever more powerful as a mentor, deepen my intuition and my ability to help people to get clarity on their soul purpose and their vision and their mission in life. So hence why I have this mandala, because I get the power of sacred geometry and alignment, and the power of love. Actually, love is a very powerful force. If you create a business you love and you run it from the heart with passion, that is the most powerful ingredient that you can build into your business. Yeah.
But I think it's incredible because I was reading a lot about Red Letter Days, and Red Letter Days was later sold for 26 million, and it's a part of the Moonpig Group now, I believe.
Yeah.
And that just shows the genius behind your idea, because you started it. Like, it doesn't matter if other people sold it off. You were the brains behind it.
I know. It would be nice if Peter and Theo were to just send me a little something in a little bit of money, a little share of that, wouldn't it? But no. Anyway, I can't get upset and sort of bitter about that. But yeah, it would have been, we did have various opportunities to exit. We were almost acquired by Octagon Group, which owned Brands Hatch. And I think that's the thing. It's like getting to exit. I think that is the ultimate thing. If you can take a business from startup and you can get to a successful exit, like Simon did, like Yo Sushi, and he almost went over the brink, but luckily he managed to pull back, and then he basically sold Yo Sushi. But his genius was he owned the brand, the Yo brand, and he kept a 3% royalty on everything sold by Yo. So that is a genius to business, and hats off to Simon for finding his way to a successful exit. But anyway, it is what it is. And but I have to say, just to add on that point, looking back, I can kind of see why the universe didn't give me that golden exit, because I know that if I'd managed to do the float, for example, I probably would have made 10 million, maybe. I just know that I would never have stood on stage. I was too terrified. I would never have done the mentoring. I probably wouldn't have written the books, maybe written one biography, had it shadow written or something. I would not have done all of the amazing experiences, that I don't think I would have done them, because I think I would have just had the money and just focused on having a nice life and just living a luxury life of hedonism, really. So, and again, I do feel like we are being called to our soul purpose. And I think that my journey led me to this soul purpose of being in this alignment and being a teacher and a guide, you know. So I think that was a more precious outcome than for me to just get 10 million and sit on a beach, you know, sipping wine and thing. So
yeah, I mean, I would definitely say you're very relevant even now, because so many people will look at your talks or book you for speaking. So not all dragons can do what you've done. So that's incredible in itself.
And not all dragons want to. I do get a lot of speaking gigs because I know, like Peter Jones, he won't speak for, Peter and Duncan won't speak for less than 10 grand. Most of them don't want to. They're not interested. Mm-hmm. So actually, like if there's a kind of, we need someone off Dragon's Den, Peter, no, Duncan, no, Deborah Mead, no, she won't do speaking. And so finally they go, yeah, I'll do it. So, and I really enjoy it because I have, you know, I've dedicated, you know, time to getting really good at being with an audience and being able to tune into an audience intuitively, read the energy of a room, just mind map some concepts, but be able to go with the flow, be able to like change my material. And, you know, it's a really beautiful thing to have mastered that, which I probably would never have done had I not gone down this route, you know.
And the last question I'd like to just ask you is, please tell us about any other projects, tell my audience about anything else you're working on, how they can support it.
Yeah, so over the past few years, I actually was, because of the whole COVID thing, I actually became a bit of an activist because I was so outraged at what was happening. It was so unlawful. And then I ended up going into politics and I stood for election, not expecting to win at all. I was an independent. And that's why I added love to my name, because we created we were trying to create a political party called Love, which is Liberation, Opportunity, Vitality, Empowerment.
Okay.
So anyway, I stood for election 3 times, twice for local council and once in the general election last year. But on every level, it was just completely exhausting, like emotionally, financially, physically. And so I got to the point last year where I thought, right, I'm going to go back into what I love, what I'm really good at, speaking, mentoring. And so I started I launched a new program starting this year called 90 Days to Transformation. And out of working with some like these amazing small groups, just got like the inspiration of, I'm 60 years old now, and I really want to create like an ultimate guide to business, which is really affordable, really practical, really simple. Something like £99, where a series of videos where you can, access in a 28 days. I think it's going to be a 28-day program, which has got all of the key things about the whole metaphysical wisdom, basics of marketing, business, fundamentals. And it's for people who are setting out, that will save them hours, if not weeks, if not months of time, and also save them huge amounts of money. So that is what I'm working on at the moment. And we're beta testing it. So I've opened up a beta testing group. So if anyone's interested in helping me to create that by being a beta tester, it's launching in April. So if you go to my website, rachelelnaugh.com/ultimate-business-beta-test, you can get on that for £99 and you can become one of my early adopter innovators and help me to beta test it. And there'll be various goodies for the people who come on that at the end of that process. When I actually, it's very powerful when you create with a community, when you co-create with some clients and get feedback. So I'm going to do a beta test, and then the actual main program will then be launched probably in September. So that's my big project for this year. So that's, and I just really want to pour all my energy, because I just get that, you know, we're not going to change the system through politics. Trump has done it in America, but he had millions and billions and huge amounts of influence. You know, the way that we're going to create the future we do want is literally to bring it into being. And there are so many people creating incredible businesses right now. Because if you think about it, all of the greatest changes in society really, truly have been made by entrepreneurs. You think of Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or, you know, Anita Roddick back in my day. It's entrepreneurs have much more power to create value and create a new world than politicians do. So I'm going back to basics and really wanting to just create a sort of legacy program that could almost become like, if you're going to go into business, do this course. Like, you have to do this course because it will give you the foundation. Because so many people are failing. I mean, 2/3 of all businesses fail in their first 18 months to 2 years. 90% of women who go into business fail. It's huge. And when I go to speak at a small business event, I ask, like, the audience, who here is really in flow and profitable and happy and in joyful bliss around their business? And like 3 hands go up. So the majority of people are struggling. And, you know, and Simon used to say this to me at Dragon's Den, you know, if everything's a struggle, stop swimming and go where the current takes you. And that's great advice. It's like persistence and determination is not like pushing a door that won't open and pushing harder and harder and harder. It's trialing and testing, adjusting, adapting until you get the formula right. It's like a combination lock. Because when you get the formula right, and we found this with Red Letter Days, it took like 18 months. When we got the formula right, it literally, the business took off and it just went exponentially. And that's the magic. It's effortless. When you get the formula right, everything's effortless, and you're just going with the flow like a whitewater rafting down a river. And that's fun. But the struggle isn't fun. So I thought, if I can create a product, a program that helps people to get into effortless flow, to get into that alignment, and that actually is when you're working with your heart. And it's very counterintuitive, because there's a program which says you can't make money doing what you love. Like, business has got to be, you've got to work hard to be successful. It's not true. If you do what you love and you have passion, and you've created a business around your sole purpose, the reason you were incarnated, that is when your life is going to really take off and transform. So I'd really encourage that. So that's going to be the essence of this 28-day program I'm creating.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for this interview. I'm just blown away. There's so many takeaways here, and I'm just going to have to digest it, because it's like, wow. But your story is incredible. Thank you so much for just sharing with me and being so open. It's sometimes hard.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, Michael. I really appreciate it. It's always good to share some wisdom and hopefully inspire people who may be watching. So, yeah, if people want to get in touch with me, please do visit me on rachelelnaugh.com website.
Thank you.